normally in a trend move, a pullback between the 50 and 61.8 is no big deal at all. In fact, very common. I wanted to talk about how common this is in Bitcoin, that we're headed down next to this 61.8 level. So for example, when we bounced from the big drop, we bounced exactly to the 61.8 level. When we had our first drop off the lows here, our first bounce was to a 61.8 level. Then we made a perfect ABC, but our first bounce was to the big 61.8 level. When I come down here and we look at what Bitcoin does down here, very often these bounces are 61.8 pullbacks. If we go all the way back to when we made a low in 2014, 2015, which is what we are hoping to see again, and we look at the first swings off the lows that we made in Bitcoin, if I go from this low to this high, this was a perfect 61.8 retrace. We retested the highs a few times. In fact, we retested this 61.8 level 3 times. Look, 1, 2, 3, and a double top here. And then eventually we broke out of it and it became resistance. But but Bitcoin certainly does like these 61.8 retraces. If I go from this high to this low, this was a 61.8 retrace, and then the uptrend continued very, very nicely. So I realize this is a crucial point. What I'm just trying to point out here is that whilst we can feel pretty bearish and depressed, look, this swing, a perfect 61.8 pullback. Now, as the trend got bigger and stronger, we ended up seeing 50% levels, which were more common. This is a 50% and so on. But I think, look, this one might be a 61.8. All I'm trying to say is 61.8 for Bitcoin is its happy place, and it's where it likes to go to. So we shouldn't be too, this one looks like a big 61.8 as well. So instead, in fact, look, perfect 61.8. So instead of us being too, instead of us getting too depressed here about Bitcoin and how far it's pulling back and why isn't it going higher from the 50%, which I'm a big fan, as you know, of a 50% pullback. For Bitcoin, 61.8 is its happy place, and we're nearly getting there. Now, if we're going to make big ABC like this pullback, and what else lines up with our 61.8 level, because we've got a really nice ABC. We've got these prior lows, which we think were a prior wave 4. We have got a whole bunch of other reasons. Now, remember, if we draw our fibs from this high to low, so the high that we made here to this low, and we reversed at a 61.8 level here, if you do that, then your first target is the 38.2. So we did that. We did our golden ratio zone here perfectly. But if you break it, your second target is to the 236 fib. So that's a little bit further to go, and that's 7,000. So that's where our 7,000 bottom of our support range comes from. It's that 236 fib retest at 7,026. I'm using Bitstamp prices here only because I want to be able to show you the history of Bitcoin and why, how common. I mean, almost everywhere you look, this 61.8 retrace for Bitcoin is, what it does. It's just what it does. So it's not a big deal that we've fallen down here, and it is a really good place to look for support. So now let's talk about this being an A, B, C. If that was the case, the pattern that we would make here is a bearish Gartley pattern, because when your first leg is to a 61.8 and you pull back, you're looking, if it's bearish, for your second leg to reverse at the 786. Okay, so let's mark where our 786 is if we're going to make this harmonic pattern. It's here, so I'm going to put a line on it. Okay, it's here at 16,125. So if this is a big ABC and we're going to make a bearish pattern here, our second leg would be to 16,125. Okay, that would keep this bearish. I tend to think if you go, beyond the 786, it's not quite so compelling an argument for a trend reversal and we continue lower. Okay, so the second rule about this is that this level should be a 1272 or 1.618 extension of this leg lower. If you just do the short 38.2, you're looking for the 1.618. If you do the deep one, you're looking for the 1272. So we'll do that and we'll see where that lines up, because that reverse engineering this, and I'll show you what I mean here. If we reverse engineer this, we can see where the low might come if we kind of extend beyond it, because 61.8 levels can be really messy. And so we'll make it red like this so we can see it. Okay, so there's our 1272 lining up with the 27. This says that we might drop down here, gosh, all the way down to 6,300. And we would, God, see how all the people, imagine all the people that bought here at 6,000. And then they rode out this drop and they're like, oh, everything's okay. I'm going to put my break even. If we come back to 6,000, anyway, this is just a bit of reverse engineering. It's quite possible that we don't, and we end up with a reversal zone just underneath. But, you know, I think it may spike a little bit beyond this level. Be prepared. Otherwise, we'll leave it like this and say this is our support. And that would line up for a perfect Gartley here. So that's one way to do it. The other way is to measure these legs. Remember, have a relationship between these two legs. So if we measure from this low to this high, okay, we're looking for it to be an ABC. And this suggests, gosh, maybe we come a bit lower. God, I doubt it, but let's see. So that doesn't quite line up. But for me, in terms of harmonic patterns or ABCs, I think, you know, we would still go from here to 16,000. And the only way we can see what happens when we get here and how it unfolds. When we get up here, we'll then have an ABC leg from here to here. Okay? And then if we come back more than this 236 fib, that would be a bearish reversal for me.